Welcome to the Brand and Market Podcast, where branding clarity meets marketing strategy. I'm your host, Allie Haney, founder of Brand and Market, a boutique agency dedicated to helping small businesses craft intentional brands and effective marketing plans. Each week, I share practical tips and insights to help you, especially those of you in real estate-related industries, build a standout brand to attract your brand's biggest fans. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. I'm your host, Allie Haney, and today I have with me Jack. He is the owner of Industrious Marketing, and he's going to be chatting with us about Google Ads. So, fun thing is that I actually had someone else on here chatting about Google Ads about a month or two ago. They mentioned that it wasn't the best for realtors, smaller realtors, but Jack is taking an opposite side of a stance, and I love hearing both sides of the story. So, I'm really excited to jump in and learn a little bit more about Jack's expertise in the realm of Google Ads, specifically in reference to realtors. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jack to introduce himself and his business.
Thanks. So my business is Industrious Marketing. I've been running Google Ads for about 10 years now. I've done social media ads. I've done kind of all kinds of stuff, but now I pretty much focus on Google. Kind of worked all over the place, but I spent a lot of time working with local businesses, service businesses, and I've worked with realtors. I've worked with mortgage brokers, so I definitely have some experience and familiarity with that space.
Very cool. What happened that made you decide to kind of like leave behind the social media or meta ads and transition specifically over into Google Ads?
Yeah, I still do a little bit of like meta ads, but I just liked Google better. I actually started with social ads, and so that was kind of my original background. And then I started getting into Google, and I just really enjoyed like the ability to. It's just like a different type of marketing, I guess, than social. And it's much more about trying to capture demand and trying to follow people's behaviors and stuff like that online and stuff like that. And I just really enjoyed kind of the challenge of finding keywords and that stuff. Meta is much more about like make lots of creative and images and stuff. And that's not my background. I don't, have design and stuff like that. And so I just kind of fell into Google and kept going. So
Have you seen like a real difference between conversion rates between social and Google, or are they pretty comparable?
it's very dependent on like the industry, like conversion rates in like the e-commerce world can be really similar between the two. But when it comes to like lead gen or service businesses and stuff like that, they could be pretty wildly different. Google can have really good conversion rates because people are literally telling you exactly what they're looking for when they search for something. And so if you do it right, you're going to capture those types of people. Whereas social, you're kind of hoping that you're hitting the right audience and that they're ready to take an action and stuff like that.
So you help other, entrepreneurs, realtors, people who own their own businesses and work for themselves. Tell me how you got into business and how Industrious Marketing started.
So I kind of have always wanted to have my own business. And so I, got into marketing, worked at various agencies. I actually started kind of doing some freelancing on the side and had a couple of clients of my own. I think it's been about 4 years ago now. And then the agency I was working at the time, she had some opportunities to pursue something else that she was interested in, and actually was like, "Hey, would you be interested in taking a few of these clients that you've been working with, and going out on your own?" And so that was really an awesome opportunity, and so I took those and the few that I had and went on my own. That was pretty much almost exactly 3 years ago now. So
That's like every business owner's dream to just like be able to have the clients already when you start and not have to find them through Google Ads.
yeah. I feel like I kind of got to skip a step there. So I was definitely fortunate.
Very good. So for those who might be new to Google Ads, can you basically just explain to us what they are, where to find them, and what it would look like for like someone who's seeing a Google ad as a consumer, what it would look like?
So there's actually kind of two different types of Google ads I'll touch on for realtors because they both can be really relevant. So the first one is just regular Google ads. The search ads specifically are the promoted search results you'll see at the top when if somebody went in and searched for local realtors or something like that. They're the very text based. They kind of look just like every other link on Google, and they're usually maybe the first 1, 2, sometimes 4 results that show up. and they're pretty much all text. There can be images that show next to them, but basically all text. And so then within Google Ads, you can run ads on YouTube. You can run some other image-based ads like that. If you think of the display ads that'll show up on websites, or like the ads you see in Gmail, sometimes some of those kind of things, those all come out of a Google Ads account as well. The other ad type, and it's actually its own separate account and everything, it's called a local service ad. And those are from Google as well. Those are very specific to local service businesses. Realtors are one of those. So those will show up at the top of search results. Typically, they'll even show above the standard text ads that you'll see. And when you see those, they'll be a lot of times like a headshot, and then like the business name, and there'll be an call to action to either like message or call the business. And they also have badges next to them. They'll say like Google guaranteed, or I think it's Google verified. I'm not 100% sure but there's a couple badges that'll show. So those are, from a business's side standpoint, like you have to actually submit like background information to Google. You submit all kinds of business information, and then they're tied to your Google business profile that most local businesses will have. And so those are like kind of like I said, they're their own account, and they're a very different ad type that'll show. The other big difference between standard Google ads and local service ads is, with a standard Google ad, you pay every time somebody clicks on your ad. Whereas with a local service ad, you only pay for actual leads that come in. So like, whether it's a phone call, or like I said, there is a message option too that can go with it. And so those can be really good for service businesses because you're much more focused on generating actual leads from people.
So I've heard of pay-per-click ads before. So does pay-per-click apply to the first category of ads that you spoke about, or does it apply to both? Because you said with the local service ads that you pay per phone call or per like lead generated. So how does that differentiate?
Pay per click, a lot of times it's called PPC too, it's kind of gotten really broad. And when people use it, a lot of times they might be referring to any kind of Google ad, or even like, so I've seen people use it for like social media ads and stuff like that as well. So it can be really broad. Technically speaking, the like actual pay per click would be standard Google ads. So the search ads, and those you actually pay every time somebody clicks on the ad, which is where that comes from. So local service ads would be different from that. If somebody clicks on your ad, you're not charged unless they actually make a phone call and become a lead for your business. So people may lump them into PPC, but they're not actually like a actual pay per click type of ad.
Okay, so I'm the consumer and I'm Googling Raleigh, North Carolina realtor. Which one would come up first? The local sales or what was the title of the other one?
Local service ads, or standard search ads.
Okay, so which one would come up first?
So if local service ads show, they typically are almost always the very first one that'll show up. However, they don't show on every search, and it can really vary whether they appear on search results or not, and who actually appears. They tend to be really competitive as well. And then a lot of times, like an actual search result will show below that then, if the local service ads are actually there.
Okay, so what's the incentive to use a local service ad over a standard Google ad?
The biggest thing with local service ads, like I said, they will, if they show, they'll show very first. And a lot of times people don't necessarily recognize those as an ad. They think of them more as like a part of like the Google Maps that'll show up, because they kind of have a similar look to them. So people are more likely to use those and click on them and call somebody. There's also kind of some trust factors in there. Like I said, with the Google badges that show, reviews will show with it. There's an actual image, like, so especially for realtors, you use like an actual image of yourself. So it feels like a very personal type of ad. And then, like I said, then the biggest thing, honestly, is that you only pay for a lead. So if somebody clicks the phone call button and they call your business and they're actually a good lead, that's when you pay for them. So you won't actually pay if people are just clicking on it, not calling, or even Google has an automated system to kind of determine if there's a bad lead in there. So let's say somebody calls and asks for a job or to pitch you on some sort of service or something like that. Google has an automated system that'll try to detect those and sort those out so you don't pay for those. It's not perfect, but it does a fairly good job of pushing a lot of those out.
I love that the local service ads are attached to your Google My Business listing. I feel like that, like you said, it just gives more credibility, more like the like, know, and trust factor. Is there a certain amount of time that you would recommend having your Google My Business listing up, or a certain amount of reviews that like kind of qualifies that you're ready to have a local service ad?
Not necessarily. I will say though that, reviews tend to be kind of a big piece of local service ads as far as, like I said, the trust factor and whether or not local service ads it's very dependent on Google to determine how and when and who shows. And what I've seen is that, people with more reviews tend to show a little more often. So what I would try to do is make sure you have a Google business profile up, have at least some reviews in there. If you can get 5, 10 reviews, that's at least something. If you have none, people might be a little more hesitant. And so then that, will kind of help help people be more interested in clicking on the ad and stuff like that.
Okay, so now we know what ad types we could use. We know where they're going to appear in the search results when a consumer searches us. So now let's kind of talk through more of strategy behind the ads. One thing that I'm really curious about is like with realtors, of course, it's become a little bit more of a saturated market. Everyone in 2020, 2021 started to jump on the real estate train. And the way that realtors are starting to differentiate themselves now is with personal brands. So is there a way that you can really like harness that personal brand as a realtor to shine through in something that feels a little bit less personal, like a Google ad?
I think absolutely, and I think that that's where I would say that if you do Google Ads correctly, that's where your realtors can have success with it. And so part of that I think is how do you differentiate yourself? And everybody can has an ad that clicks to the website and asks people to fill out a form to contact them, right? And so a big piece of whether or not you'll be successful with Google Ads is how do you stand out from that? And I think for realtors especially, who you are as a person and your personal brand is going to be a big piece of that. So local service ads, obviously, there you actually get that image of yourself next to your ad. You can have information on your business profile. Have additional images, have reviews, have you can even create posts and stuff on Google Business profiles and things like that that'll help kind of set you apart and help people connect with you a little bit more. And so that's kind of a big piece for realtors on with local service ads. Is you just stand out as a person. The other thing though is I think with Google ads, text ads are harder to do that, but with your ad text, you can definitely try to personalize things, localize things, use headlines and descriptions that are going to make you stand out from everybody. Like, right, everybody has an ad that says local realtor or will help you sell your house fast or something like that. Where you can differentiate yourself is like, what are you offering people and what do you have that's different from everybody else in town? And so if you've already built that, as part of your business, you just need to showcase that inside of the ads. And then from there, I think, you can get into a lot of other things like you can use YouTube ads to show, like say on YouTube shorts or even just, regular YouTube videos and things like that. If you're generating video content, you have that kind of stuff, those can be another good option to, make yourself stand out and get in front of people and showcase kind of that personal brand that you have.
That makes sense. So, follow-up question to that is if I have a personal brand that's pretty well established, I know who my ideal client is. It's not just anybody that's moving to the area, but I want to work specifically with, let's say, first time homeowners or specifically with someone that is an empty nester, whatever it might be. Are you able to target those people using specific keywords in the ad?
Yeah, with kind of a standard search ad. So the core of those campaigns are keywords. And you can kind of think of those as what somebody would actually type into Google. And so yeah, you can, if you're trying to kind of target a specific audience, you can build keywords, around first time home buyers or build keywords around, empty nesters looking to sell or something like that. So you can absolutely do that with keywords. The other thing again is, how do you customize your ad copy to those people as well? If you create your ad copy correctly and speak to that audience that you want to reach, you're going to filter out those other types of people, right? If your ad copy is very like focused on first time home buyers, second time, somebody looking to buy their second house or sell and downsize, those kind of things are going to be less likely to click on that, and you can kind of hone in your audience that way as well.
I think some people are actually scared to do that. They don't want to like narrow the field so much. They feel like they're disqualifying a bunch of leads, but in my experience in the branding world and the marketing world, it's the smaller that you narrow it down, the more specific person that you're talking to. A, the leads are going to be qualified, and B, you're actually going to enjoy working with those people because that's the people that you like to work with and that you know you can help.
And I mean, honestly, I struggle with it in my own business, but the thing I've found too is, even if you speak to those specific audiences, it doesn't necessarily mean that nobody else is going to reach out to you, right? Like, but you are able to kind of really like set yourself apart and show that you know what you're talking about. And that's a challenge that I've seen with I've seen plenty of Google Ads accounts for local businesses or realtors that aren't doing well. And part of the problem is their keywords are built up of things like homes for sale near me, or realtors near me, or even things just like realtors or real estate agents, like just really basic broad terms. The problem with that is everybody's trying to reach those, right? National firms, local firms, like everybody wants to reach those keywords. And so that's the more you're able to kind of narrow down and set yourself apart, it gives you more of an opportunity to make your ads stand out and kind of find that audience that you actually want to target.
Okay, so that's what the other Google Ads gal that I was speaking with said, was that like those keywords are so saturated that you have to pay just so much money in order to even get close to ranking for them, I guess. Okay, so give me again, repeat for me what it is like the alternative to trying to reach all the people that are using, or excuse me, reach the keyword that all the people are using. What's a different strategy to go about that?
Yeah, so what I would do is they'll call them long tail keywords or things like that. Think of keywords that are like going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 words and stuff like that. And so maybe it's like very specific to first time home buyers. So it could be like keywords that are real estate agents for first time home buyers, or help for first time home buyers, how to buy a home, and some of those kind of things. And I think one thing to keep in mind with those two is like you will get a lot of more informational searches, people researching for things and some of that kind of stuff. And that's, I think, a lot of people struggle with Google Ads because they're trying to just like, you want somebody to click on your ad and immediately be like, "Yep, you're my agent now. Like, let's go." To be successful, you're gonna have to be willing to capture people earlier in their decision making process and set yourself apart like that, and then get introduced to them, and now you use your brand, your ability to kind of close that person and actually turn them into a client.
6 years ago, I opened the door to my first guest on Airbnb. I didn't know then just how much it would change our lives. Since then, I've hosted hundreds of guests, welcomed people from all over the world across multiple states, and maintained Superhost status every single quarter. But more than the 5-star reviews, it's what this extra income has allowed us to do. Family trips, breathing room in our finances, and the freedom to build a life on our terms. Hosting on Airbnb has created a steady revenue stream that fits into our schedule and our lives. Whether it's a single-family home, a guest house that you rarely use, or even a room in your home, Airbnb helps you turn that space into opportunity. If you've been thinking about entering the world of Airbnbs or short-term rentals, I would love to chat. My DMs are always open, but if you're ready to host, you can use my link to get started. You can find it in today's show notes, or you can go to www.brandandmarket.co/Airbnb for more information. Happy hosting!
Yeah, so that's why I always say, like, we want your brand's ecosystem to be very sticky. So, like, no matter where they enter, they have a next step that they are able to take very easily. So, for example, if Google Ads was the place that they entered and they are looking for those informational searches at the very beginning of that sales process, if they're looking for that informational search, you could have a blog post there that's actually going to keep them on your website. So that's how you would continue to nurture that lead, make them, go from cold to warm, and hopefully have a pop-up or a freebie or something installed on your website to get them on your email list. So then you're on their inbox, at once a week. So it's never just like one quick fix. We just want to make sure that all of the pieces of the puzzle fit together and there's no like broken systems in the midst of all of that.
Yeah, and so I think that kind of ties. So what I would say, like, if you run Google Ads and you're just like I said, you're targeting really broad terms and you're just trying to get people to pick up the phone immediately and call you, or something like that. Honestly, Google Ads probably won't work for you. I'll probably agree with the other Google Ads person. Like those are really hard. If you have unlimited budget and you're a giant national firm, sure, like you probably can make that work because you have enough money to waste to capture all the people you can. But for local realtors, what's much more effective. And what I've helped people do is to try to capture those people way earlier in that process. And so I guess like a good example would be like, let's say you want to get first time home buyers. So what I would recommend you do is you create a like first time home buyers guide, like a super, in-depth PDF that's everything that a first time home buyer needs to know when they're trying to figure out how to buy a house. Like, so, people are going to go to Google, they're going to search, how do I buy a house? How do I save? How do I figure out lending? How do I do all these things? So if you build a really, comprehensive report like that and you target kind of those very specific keywords around what somebody's searching, you send them to a really good landing page where you try to get them to download that report, you're going to be much more likely to bring in qualified leads and people that are going to be interested. And then like you said, you have to have the systems built to kind of work them through and close them.
Absolutely. So let's transition over a little bit to talk more about budget. As an independent realtor, what should I expect to spend in terms of ROI, like in terms of the investment, but then what should I expect on ROI?
So there's a kind of a few different things you can look at doing. I will say if you're going to run standard search ads, it absolutely is competitive. The keywords can be expensive. And the thing with Google Ads is you need to generate enough clicks and enough data that you can actually make the campaigns effective. If you're only getting like 1 or 2 clicks a day, you're probably going to struggle. So I see real estate and it'll depend on your market, right? The more competitive it is or things like that, these things, it can vary really widely. But I'll see clicks that are 10, 15, $20 a piece every time somebody clicks on your ad. And so like, let's say you have Google's budgets are typically a daily budget is how you run them. And so say you've got a $50 a day budget, so you're spending like $1,500 a month. Well, if your clicks are $10 a piece, you're only going to generate 5 clicks a day, roughly, right? What I found and what I tell people is you need at least like 10 clicks a day, ideally more than that. So if you're running a $10 cost per click and you need 10 clicks per day, you're going to need a $100 a day budget, so a $3,000 a month budget, and that's kind of like the bare minimum. So the other thing I'll tell clients is anything under $5,000 a month I consider a small budget. Some people will say anything under $10,000 a month is a small budget. It's much harder to be successful at those budget levels than it is if you're spending more than that, just because you don't generate enough clicks and enough data to make things successful. But I do have some other ideas and strategies you can try if your budget's smaller and you want to do things there too. So
You mentioned it kind of also depends on which market you're in as a realtor. Is there certain like check boxes that can help people determine whether or not their market would be responsive to Google Ads?
probably the easiest way would be like to just go ahead and set up a Google Ads account. You can do it for free. So you'll have to put in payment information and stuff like that. But if you don't set up a campaign, you won't have to actually run any campaigns. And then Google has something called a keyword planner, the Google Keyword Planner, and you can actually go in there and build out keywords, and Google will give you estimated like high and low CPCs. You could also if you find somebody that runs Google Ads and talks to them, they might be able to go and do that research for you too. And so you can actually determine like, hey, this is the location where I'd want to run ads. You can even look at like time periods, see if there's seasonality differences, some of those kind of things. And so you can kind of get an idea of what it would take to do that. The other thing you could try to do is just kind of Google and look. There's lots of people that'll put out like benchmarks or studies or things like that that'll tell you like what different industries cost and some of those kind of things. And there's probably some other keyword tools out there that'll try to estimate that kind of stuff too. But those are kind of the best ways.
Okay, so you said budget for standard Google ad around $3,000 to $5,000 a month on the lower-ish end. Does that budget stand the same for the local service ads?
So that is where there's kind of I guess another probably difference between those two. So with local service ads, you can honestly run smaller budgets, especially depending on how competitive your industry is, how many people there are. Like I live in Montana, so like there's areas where we run it where there's just not a lot of people, right? And so you can only spend so much money. So I have a local roofing business I work with, and their local service ads spend like less than $1,000 a month, but they'll get 10 to 15 really good leads out of them. And so it kind of depends. With local service ads, you actually set a weekly budget, and you can set like Sometimes I'll start it at like $500 a week. So, that'd be around 2,000 a month. You can go higher or lower. And Google will try to kind of hit that target budget. The thing with local service ads is it can be really dependent on how many leads actually come in, right? You only pay for every lead that comes in. So if you get quite a few leads, you can burn through that budget really fast. If you don't get a lot of leads, you may not, spend that whole budget or things like that. So you get a little more variability there, but they can be more effective if your budget's on the lower end.
Okay. And so I realized that, realtors obviously work with buyers and sellers, but we've been talking mostly about buyers and attracting buyers through Google Ads. Let's talk about sellers for a second. If I had like one specific property that I wanted to sell, would a Google ad make sense for that or not really?
I wouldn't like local service ads, search ads, those kind of things are probably not going to make sense if you're trying to push a property. I actually have a realtor here in town that I have worked with a couple times and helped them. And we've specifically kind of created some strategies around things to promote properties and stuff like that. I will say that social media can be much more effective for that kind of stuff, just because you're actually like pushing the property out to people. One thing that we've done though, and talked about, like, let's say you have a property that you really want to sell, you've got like a nice video of it. You could run ads on YouTube and try to get that in front of people. Especially like you've probably seen people be successful on like TikTok or YouTube Shorts promoting a house that way. You can do the same. Like you can create kind of a similar video of that. Like let's say you're giving a tour and something kind of fun and interesting. You can then use YouTube Shorts to promote that property and get it in front of people. So that would probably be the most effective way on Google Ads. It would be, to lean into the YouTube world and actually promote it. There's some other things you could try. How effective they would be, it would kind of depend. So
One of the brokers, the reason I asked that question was one of the brokers that I talked to in Kentucky. I actually had my real estate license there for a very short time. And when I was interviewing with other brokers to come on, she mentioned that a lot of people in California want to buy land in rural Kentucky. So I think it was Meta ads that she used, that she would, have, let's say, a 20-acre plot for what seemed like absolutely nothing to people in California, like let's say $300,000. Sounds like a lot to people in Kentucky, but in in California, it didn't sound like a lot. So people were like scooping them up because she was targeting geographically specific areas that she saw an influx into the area. So that's the reason I asked that question. I don't know if that strategy could be applied to Google Ads or not.
You could do it. So Google has an ad type called demand gen, and it shows on YouTube. It'll show on the Google Discovery feed, if anybody's familiar with that. Like Pixel phones have it, a lot of Android phones have it. It's kind of like a news feed or something like that, and it'll show on Gmail and some of kind of those things. So that would be the other, like let's say you have. I think that would be the perfect fit for that kind of thing. It's really like a social-esque type campaign, and you could kind of do that same kind of thing. Like, hey, like we have this really really cheap land or this really cool opportunity. And you can geographically target and some of those kind of things with that. So that would be one opportunity to try for something like that. The biggest thing is you need time and data for those campaigns to get effective. And that's kind of like the biggest enemy of trying to sell something, right? Like you don't want it to take a really long time unless you're trying to do something that maybe you have like a lot of properties to sell or a lot of lots to sell or something like that. Like, and you're okay with it running for a long period of time because you're going to be kind of like selling these properties, like these lots again and again and again, then something like that might start to make more sense.
Okay, that makes sense. Tell me again what the name of that type of ad is.
Demand gen would be the campaign type.
Okay, interesting. All right, so if we have any realtors that are interested in working with Industrious Marketing and Jack, can you walk me through what it would look like in order to do that? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so I have a few different like kind of offers, I guess. The first one will be like, you just hire me and I run everything for you. Typically for that, you need to be spending at least $5,000 a month, and then we'll build a strategy and come up with kind of what we want to do and what we want to accomplish. The pricing for that will kind of depend on your ad spend, and it varies depending on, how much you spend.
That's ad spend plus service fee.
Correct. Yeah. So the ad spend you'll actually pay to Google, and then the management fee is for my services. So, and then I do have another service I offer kind of specifically for small businesses. It's if you're spending under $5,000 a month, there's $1,000 setup fee, and then I manage it for $500 a month. The trade-offs with that is like I don't have meetings. It's all like email communication. Reporting is more automated and less customized. I kind of take out some of those like time constraints and things like that that come with full management, and try to offer, still a high quality management service, but lower touch and that kind of stuff to help smaller businesses.
So what does that onboarding process look like for the small businesses with the smaller ad spend?
So part of the reason I have it is I'll help you set up your ad account, help you set up tracking for it if you don't already have those kind of things. Usually like we'll have a meeting and do a little more strategy, to kind of figure things out from the get-go, especially like with the realtors and stuff like that. We want to have like a really clear, like, what's our goal? Are we just trying to drive people that are going to be ready to buy tomorrow? In that case, honestly, probably not a good fit. But or are you trying to like, maybe promote like we talked about, like a first-time home buyer guide, or some sort of thing, and we can kind of build a strategy around how to make that work. And so we can kind of do all that stuff up front, get everything in place, and then hit the ground running with the management. And so then the last couple things I have, like I'll do paid audits. So let's say you're already running ads, you're not happy with the performance, or even if you are happy and you just want like a second set of eyes, I'll go through and audit your whole account and provide a, really in-depth, I compare it to like a SWOT analysis, because people kind of know what that is. But it's like, here's everything that's great. Here's some things that might need work. Here's some opportunities you could look at, some of that kind of stuff. It's not a sales tool. It's really comprehensive, super in-depth. I go through everything top to bottom. Kind of the final thing I'll offer is like coaching services for people. And I have a few different ways of doing that. But basically the goal is to help you run your own ads, teach you how to run them, teach you like what you can change, what you can try, kind of work with you as a coach and help you work through that. Those are much more affordable than like a full ad management kind of thing. And you can basically hire me as long as you want. And then if you feel like you're good to go, you can head off and do it for your own, and then always come back and say like, hey, I need help with this thing, and we can do it for a little bit and that kind of stuff.
So it doesn't matter whether you are new or established as a realtor, Jack has something for you.
That's the goal.
Okay. And my final question to you, Jack, is what would you say to a realtor who wants to be the best in their brand and their market? How do they do that?
I'd say find a way to differentiate yourself. Like what makes you, why should people go to you and not someone else? And I think that's probably one of the most challenging things in the world of real estate, just because there's only so many ways to do that. But I think that's, especially if you want to stand out online, and if you want to make things effective for you, like what's different about you? Why should I go with you? I think the more you're able to make that happen, the more you'll connect with people and be able to build that brand.
Absolutely. That's one of my main things with brand strategy is what's your UVP, your unique value proposition, what makes you different than the next person that does the exact same thing as you. Okay, Jack, thanks for spending time with us today. How can people find you once this podcast episode is over? Tell us your website, your Instagram, email, whatever you might want to tell us.
So you can find me, my website's industriousmarketing.co. Always messes people up because it's not .com. And so there's actually somebody else with .com, so I'm stuck with .co. And then you can find me really active on LinkedIn, actually. You'll actually find me on there as Harrison Jack Hepp. I go by my middle name, so most people know me as Jack, but online you'll find me as Harrison Jack Hepp. Same thing on Twitter or X. I'm on there sometimes, and I have an Instagram too, and I'm not super active on that one. So LinkedIn and Twitter are probably the best places, or just visit my website.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Jack. We appreciated your alternative take on Google Ads for realtors. You taught me new things about local service ads and the demand ad, so many things. So thank you again for your time, and signing off here. You just completed another episode of the Branded Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.